Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Obviously, some really disappointing news coming out for this Florida Gators football program during fall camp over the weekend. Starting running back Montrell Johnson Jr. going to miss 4 to 6 weeks, getting a knee scope procedure done. And I think that opens up the question, what is Florida going to do in this rushing attack week 1 against the Miami Hurricanes? Now, I think there are two things that can be true. One, Montrell Johnson Jr. is a very good running back. I have spent an extensive time over the summer not only watching Montrell Johnson Jr., but banging the table to you guys that I think he's going to be one of the better running backs that we see in the SEC. I still think that's going to be true once Montrell Johnson Jr. gets back healthy within this Florida Gators offense. But you also have to start having the conversation of, what is this rushing attack going to look like for the Florida Gators come week 1 if Montrell Johnson Jr. is not healthy and ready to go? Now, I think you have some depth in that running back room that's intriguing, a couple of true freshmen that we're going to talk about, but you can start getting creative in terms of how you want to manufacture rushing production within this Florida Gators offense. And I think one of those conversations can go to freshman quarterback DJ Lagway, a quarterback that is 6'3", 240 pounds, ran for over 900 rushing yards during his senior season in high school. This is a guy that, hey, we know Graham Mertz is going to be the starting quarterback of this Florida Gators offense, but we also know that DJ Lagway is way too talented to keep off the field in 2024. Can you maybe manufacture some rushing production with DJ Lagway at the quarterback spot at certain points during that Miami Hurricanes game? That is certainly a question that I think Florida should be looking into. You have some running backs and guys like Eugene Wilson that can also give you some rushing production as well. And so not only are we going to talk about some of the running back depth and what running backs might step up for this Florida Gators program, but I also want to have a conversation regarding how creative you might be able to get within this offense in terms of stimulating rushing production week 1 against the Miami Hurricanes. Really excited to get into this conversation. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Florida Gator fans. You all know I've had just an absolute blast talking this program, whether we're talking transfer portal, whether we're talking the new coaching staff, the recruiting trail, and the amount of support y'all continue to show to the fellas. It truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, but much more importantly, would love to hear your ideas in terms of what Florida is going to do with this rushing attack heading into the 2024 season, specifically against the Miami Hurricanes, if Montrell Johnson Jr. is not ready to go. And without further ado, let's get into this one and let's start exploring some of the other running backs that we have in this room. And I want to start with former 4-star running back Trayon Webb going into year 2 within this Florida Gators program, a running back that we all liked a lot coming out of high school and didn't get a ton of opportunity as a true freshman, which makes sense when you had 2 elite running backs and Trevor Etienne and Montrell Johnson Jr. in that backfield. You saw Florida gain some confidence with Trayon Webb. He was a guy that Florida tried to get involved in this offense, a guy that showed you that he has some juice to him. And I think going into year 2, as he continues to get that body right for the SEC level of play, he's probably the running back that we expect to take over the running back 1 duties within this Florida Gators offense. But the question is, what does the depth look like behind Trayon Webb? Because quite frankly, it was probably a question even when Montrell Johnson Jr. was healthy, right? We knew we had our bell cow running back 1, but what was running back 2 and running back 3 going to look like? Trayon Webb was one of those guys that we included in that conversation. I want to talk about a running back that we have. I don't even think I've mentioned him one time when we talk about the Florida Gators. That's Jacoby Jackson, JUCO kid. Didn't play or was with this Florida Gators program in 2023. Didn't get a lot of action. He's a guy that generated a lot of buzz around springtime. I'm not going to get up here and tell you I know a ton about Jacoby Jackson. Buzzed his JUCO film a couple of days ago when I saw the Montrell Johnson Jr. news happen. He's a guy that you probably can rely on to give a few touches, but I think a lot of Florida Gator fans go to the true freshman, and my particularly favorite true freshman, and that's Jaden Baugh. And we did a freshman spotlight series on Jaden Baugh a couple of days ago. What stands out to me about Jaden Baugh is, one, he was a very good prospect coming out of high school, and we saw him put it together during the spring game for the Florida Gators. And I think most importantly, when you're having that conversation with true freshman running backs. Are you physically ready to play early? Jaden Baugh at 6'1", 230 pounds is certainly one of those guys. And I think what's so fascinating is I saw the weight and said, there ain't no way that he's almost 240 pounds. And you look at Jaden Baugh and say, you look at the lower half. This kid is built in the lower half. It starts to make sense why he's 230 plus pounds. Jaden Baugh is a guy that physically, I personally think, is ready to play early in the SEC as a running back. Now, I think the question is, all right, how is he as a pass catcher? I think one of the conversations we have to have is Montrell Johnson was top 5 in targets last year as a pass catcher out of the backfield. Had over 30 catches for 236 yards. There's also some pass catching production that you have to try to replace with Montrell Johnson Jr. Is Jaden Baugh a guy that can get it done not only in pass pro, but as a pass catcher? That's probably what you're looking for during fall camp. And one of the, and I'm not going to say benefits because it doesn't sound right to say benefits, but one of the benefits for Jaden Baugh is that he's going to get a little bit more reps in fall camp. I mean, if Montrell Johnson Jr. was there, he's getting the majority of the reps with the running back ones. As Montrell Johnson Jr. can't practice, Jaden Baugh is going to be a guy that's going to get some more opportunity to get on the football field during practice, make sure he's refined as a pass catcher and in pass pro. Jaden Baugh, I think, is going to play week 1 against the Miami Hurricanes. I think he's physically ready. I think he's ready between the ears. He's a guy that attacks the line of scrimmage. You also got to talk about KD Daniels, a guy that I thought was fascinating coming from Mississippi, uber productive coming out of high school. I believe he ran for over 4,000 rushing yards during his career. I would personally lean Jaden Baugh, but now you're kind of really paying attention to these true freshman running backs and trying to identify what running backs are going to be ready early. Now, I want to have the conversation of, we talked about the running backs. We got to have some, I mean, quite frankly, you just have to have these true freshmen step up and be guys that you can rely on week 1 against the Miami Hurricanes. There is no question about that. That being said, what are some other ways that Florida can stimulate this rushing attack? Again, I'm looking to a guy like DJ Lagway. You look at DJ and say he is, one, built to carry the football. I mean, there are a lot of quarterbacks that might be good athletes, but you don't want them taking too many hits because they don't have big frames. DJ Lagway is one of those quarterbacks that we're not necessarily worried about DJ Lagway getting hurt. We're worried about the linebackers that are trying to tackle DJ Lagway getting hurt. He is bigger than every single linebacker that is going to try to tackle him. He's got a very thick lower half, and he's a guy that you can use in that rushing situation, but also at the same time, he was a top 5 national prospect coming out of high school. He can burn you down the field if he wants as well. You go back to Tim Tebow playing as a true freshman, primarily just running the football. DJ Lagway is a much more polished passer. So when he takes the field, which I fully expect to happen during this Miami Hurricanes game, yes, the defense is going to be keying in on what DJ Lagway might be able to do with his legs, but I would guarantee you that if DJ Lagway gets more than 5 to 8 snaps as a quarterback within this Florida Gators offense, he's going to throw the football 1 or 2 times during the Miami Hurricanes, try to hit one of those explosive plays. That's one of those ways you can get creative in terms of trying to replace 1,600 yards of rushing production between Montrell Johnson Jr. and a guy like Trevor Etienne. I also think you have some wide receivers that you can get involved in the rushing attack, mostly being Eugene Wilson. Eugene Wilson's a guy that if you can just get the football into his hands, good things are going to happen. We saw Eugene Wilson get utilized as just a dynamic weapon as a true freshman. Maybe Florida needs to put a little bit more on his plate, not only as a pass catcher within this offense, but also as a guy that you can get outside of the tackles, give some end arounds to maybe. And there's an element of you can kind of have your passing attack just be an extension of the run game. So swing passes, screen passes, they might not necessarily go to the box score as rushing attempts, but they're essentially rushing plays. And so Eugene Wilson is a guy that I would expect to get more touches as Montrell Johnson Jr. works his way back from injury. You got a speedster in Tank Hawkins, who I would think that Florida tries to get the football into his hands. And Elijah Badger is another guy that can operate with the football in his hands. And so you look at how Florida goes about replacing a guy like Montrell Johnson Jr. When you look at the young running backs, guys like Trayon Webb and Jaden Baugh, but you also look at other weapons on this football field, DJ Lagway, Eugene Wilson, as guys that could maybe stimulate some rushing production for this Florida Gators program early in the season as Montrell Johnson Jr. continues to try to come back healthy. and how I probably want to finish this conversation is, hey, we are not going to count out a guy like Montrell Johnson Jr. If there's something that I've learned as a college football fan over the last couple of years, one, modern medicine is getting pretty dang good. And number two, these kids are freaks. If there are guys, and Montrell Johnson, he's one of those freaks. If there are guys that can expedite the expected recovery, I would expect it to be Montrell Johnson Jr. Again, we're not counting on him to play week one. That's what we just had this conversation for the last 10 minutes about. That being said, we'll continue to monitor what Montrell Johnson Jr.'s recovery looks like. Look, there's no way to sugarcoat it. It's not good news. I think this is one of the better running backs in the SEC that you might have to play one of your biggest games of the season without. There's no doubt about that. Not good news. There's also a way that I think Florida can work around that, the absence of Montrell Johnson Jr. We'll see what they decide to do. Billy Napier is going to try to get creative in terms of how they run the football. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Again, appreciate all the support you guys have shown the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later.